Okay, so lesson number 4 is bugs and RFEs show up in unexpected places. I didn't really expect that zpool scrub would forget about the time of last scrub, and so I ended up writing a workaround around that, just because I wanted to spare people running laptops from having too many scrubs. Because if you ever experience booting a laptop with 2 pools on the same disk and both pools scrubbing at the same time, you will know that booting can take a long time with that. So you want to make sure you don't scrub too often. So this is also lesson number 5. If in doubt, do it in SMF. Not because it's efficient or whatever, it's just because it's more transparent to the administrator and helps you keep stuff in order. Okay, so let's take a look at the service. Here's our little service in action. Here's the directory where it's stored. If we call SVCS, then we see that the ZFS auto scrub monthly service is running. SMF supports instances of services, so the implementation can be tailored by using properties. I can define my properties so that my scrub service scrubs once every week or once every day or once every 2 months. And depending on how I define those properties, don't worry, they'll go away. Once how I define those properties, I can give it a name to my specific instance of the service. And in this case, one of the instances that is created by default is called monthly. And it's now running online, and it'll just pop up every month and check whether the pool needs to be scrubbed. If we do a zpool status on one of the pool, let's use my test pool here, then we will see that it has been scrubbed before this morning while I last tested my system. And if we get all the properties for the test pool, then we see our special property here down here, which is called Solaris Auto Scrub Last Scrub, which faithfully records the time of last scrub. So just to test the service, we can delete this properties, so to make it think that it hasn't scrubbed before. So here's a quick test question, ZFS test question for you here. How do I delete a property? With what command? A bit louder, what did you say? No, this is a ZFS property, and I want to delete a ZFS property. This is actually hard to do. What?
Set a value.
I can set it to a null value, but it will still stay there as a property. I want to get rid of that whole property. I don't want any entry here, so how do I do that? Okay, so I had to look it up, and I had to ask a couple of very bright people. You have to say ZFS inherit, which is slightly non-intuitive. Why is it that? So properties in ZFS are inherited. So if I don't set that property, for that specific property, it will take the value of its ancestor, even with custom properties. So to tell it that it shouldn't have its own local property, I need to tell it that it should inherit that property from whoever is above, even though, it means forget about your local version of that property, use whatever your parents told you to, which is ZFS inherit. So if I say xx ZFS inherit, and then the name of the property, this is equivalent of it forgetting about this whole thing. So if I check again, the property is gone. So very useful to keep in mind, because it can drive you mad when you want to get rid of something and you don't know how. Okay, so the property is gone. Next thing we need to do, we need to get rid of this here, and we can do this by exporting and importing the pool. So ZFS export test pool. No, not zpool export. They should merge them into the same command. So our pool is exported, and we need to import it again. This is a test pool that's done on files, because I don't have enough disks on my laptop, so I need to add the -d property here, so it looks for those files to import from, and I believe those files are sitting in stuff. And then test. There it is. you can see here the bug that I filed is still active because it forgot all about its last scrub. And now that this is technically an unscrubbed pool and we don't know when it was scrubbed, when I restart my service with svc adm restart auto scrub monthly. So when the service is started, it will first of all check all the pools. So it should be now scrubbing. Yes, it is scrubbing and everything works. So, okay, no surprises here. Now that was the easy part. Next thing is we want a GUI, right? We live in the year 2009, everything needs a GUI. So I wanted to be yet more ambitious and create a GUI where you just need one checkbox and then all of your scrubbing needs are taken care of. And for this we have the Open Solaris Visual Panels project, which is a new project. I actually asked Tim Foster, the author of the ZFS Auto Snap picture, so how did you do your GUI which turns on and off the auto snapshot thing? And he said, oh, this is old stuff. Go use the new stuff, and the new stuff is the Visual Panels project. This is how the Visual Panels project work. The most important feature is it's a client-server model. This means any system can run the GUI, which is called the Visual Panel, to administer and change some administration things on any other system over the network, which is the managed system. The Visual Panels project uses the Java Management Extensions API to have the Visual Panel talk to so-called management beans. Those management beans are the pieces of code that actually do the management work. All of the management beans running on the systems are collected inside a JMX agent, which is a service that takes care of those beans and makes them available over the network. So what happens is when you call up the GUI will connect over the network to one of these JMX servers, hopefully the right one, and it will establish a connection to a management bean. A management bean could be one of the pre-shipped beans that connect directly to the service configuration facility, which is the API that talks to SMF, or it could be any other configuration tool. And if I want to create my GUI, I need two things. One thing is I need to create my own management bean that does the actual work, and it could be as simple as running a system command that's embedded in my Java application. And the other piece I need to create is the actual Visual Panel, which is the GUI. Fortunately, the current Visual Panels package, if you install it, it comes with a couple of pre-built beans, so you only have to do the GUI part of, because there is already one SMF bean that can do everything that SMF can do, and you can talk to it and let it do your SMF configuration changes for you. Okay, so what we need to create our own Visual Panel is first we need a Java class which is called a panel descriptor. The panel descriptor is kind of like the pivot point. It's everything that Java Visual Panels needs to know to get all the information about our panel. So this is sort of like the master thing. It comes with a controller. The controller is the piece of code that connects my GUI with the management bean. So this is where I would place my logic that sort of makes sense out of my GUI elements and then tells the bean what to do. And then we need the actual panel, which is the Java class that does all the GUI things. NetBeans comes with a nice GUI builder, which is very comfortable to use. So what you do is you just start NetBeans, you call up the GUI builder, you click yourself a GUI, you draw everything, you write the text that you want to show up, and then you wire everything up with a controller, the panel descriptor. And there is a pre-built panel descriptor that is already integrated with SMF. So if you use the special SMF panel descriptor, you don't need to do your own management bean. You just need to tell it what the name of your SMF service is, and it will give you all the methods you need to access that SMF service, which is what I did. And after you put together all of your Java classes into that jar file, the only other thing you need is a short XML file that tells the Visual Panel system, my jar file is sitting there, go load it and make it part of your set of Visual Panels. So this is our new shopping list, everything we had before, and we are now including a Visual Panel, which is just a jar file with all of our Java classes and an XML file that describes those classes. This is how the panel looks like, and we can actually see it in action, because we only believe what we see. If you look at the distribution, we can check out the XML file. Short-sighted, okay, the CFS, auto scrub panel.xml. It's a very simple XML file. It just tells you the name of the panel, short description. This is the class that should be instantiated to get the panel running. This is our panel descriptor, and this is the directory where it should expect the jar file. This is everything you need, and then Visual Panels knows how to do it. Let's start NetBeans real quick to see how it looks in code. And here's a quick plug on NetBeans. I'm not a big Java developer, but I find that NetBeans is really easy, even if you just want to get your GUI done for Solaris. So if you haven't tried it before, go download NetBeans. It's really easy on Open Solaris, and start playing with Java. We need to wait a little bit for it to work. I planned to do it before my talk, but somehow I got caught in an argument. Okay, sorry, here is NetBeans. This is how the panel descriptor looks like. Of course, like any good Java code, there are buckets of imports at the beginning. They just happen naturally, and NetBeans actually helps you find those right imports, so you don't have to do much. There are a couple of blog entries. They are referenced from the white paper in the proceedings, where you can see some more examples. And this is where the auto scrub panel descriptor is instantiated, and it just calls itself from its superclass with the SMF service that we want to create. So this is actually the only thing that attaches it to the SMF management bean. You tell it, hello SMF management bean, I want to control the system file system ZFS auto scrub service, and of all the instances I want to control the monthly instance. Go give me the connection to that management bean. So it talks over the network to the server, and it fetches the right management bean, and it establishes the connection, and then I can use that to control my service. This is the piece where the control class is being instantiated, and this is a class that you need to write yourself. So let's take a look at the control class. The control class is actually really simple. It just has a method that is called when creating the component. This is the piece of code in the controller that creates my actual GUI, and there is another method, I think at the bottom, that is called activate service, and this is the piece of code that gets called whenever I hit that checkbox. And I don't even check what that box says, because I just take the value from the checkbox and I forward it to my management bean. So this thing doesn't even know whether it's activating or deactivating. It just takes the state from the checkbox and forwards it to the management bean by calling service set persistently enabled, and this is the state that we were given from the GUI. So this is just forwarding one thing to the other. This is the actual panel? Yes, this should be the actual panel. And okay, in this case there is a small hack. When I create my own GUI in Java, I will get a Java Swing panel object, and I can't change the nature of that object. But in order to be able to use it as part of the Visual Panels application, I need a special subclass of panel, which is provided by Visual Panels. So how do I do that? I just take my own designed panel and place it within the one I'm supposed to use, and that sort of works. So this is the panel that is associated with the Visual Panels application, and if I call my own one, I'm able to use the GUI. So this is, and I called it the panel content. So when I call that one up, I will get access to the GUI builder, and this is actually the whole GUI. This is what I click together, a small checkbox which says enable automatic scrubbing, and a small label that describes to the user what that checkbox is running. So if we whip everything together, we can then start our panel by saying VP and then ZFS auto scrub. It'll take some time because it now loads Java, and then it goes on and loads the Visual Panels framework, establishes the connection, and after doing all of these things, it will pop up with our GUI. So here's our GUI. The nice thing about this GUI is there are some things that I didn't have to program. So, for instance, at the top we see a green checkbox and a status that tells me the instance is online, so my service is online, and it also tells me what user I am. So I didn't have to program this. So this is a feature of the SMF panel that automatically tells the user how the service is doing, and only the stuff in the middle is the stuff that I provided. It of course fetches the current state from the bean and asks the bean, so is the service enabled, yes or no, passes that value to the checkbox, and I see the status here. And if I uncheck it, then at the top it says for a brief time, okay, I'm deactivating it now. It also displays all the intermediate states, and now it tells me the instance is disabled. And when I check it again, then it will say it's offline because it's transitioning to the online state, and after a short while it tells me it's online. So this is really interacting through all the mechanisms. Now, the other nice part of this that I didn't have to program is this small lock here, because now I'm able to log into a different system. I just need to give it the host name here, the username, or the username and the role, and I'm able to log into a completely different system that is running visual panels, and I'm able to administer my service from here. And as a GUI programmer, I didn't have to do anything. The only thing I did is paint my GUI and connect it to the methods that are provided by the management beans. I don't need to care about how do you log into a different system, how does the authentication work, and whatever. So this is everything taken care of by the Visual Panels project. So after I get bored with the service, I can just quit it and go on doing my own work. There are a number of other things that are shipped with Visual Panels. Of course, there are more complex things. They are automatically installed into the system menu when you install the Visual Panels package. So, for instance, there is a core file administration panel over here, and there is a services panel over here that shows you all of the services of SMF, and then you can manipulate them using the Visual Panels framework. So the next lesson we learn, little things please little minds, especially if they are little GUIs, because I was, of course, happy as a small kid. Look, my own GUI. And of course, I plan to make this GUI a little bit more descriptive, a little bit more interesting, but it was literally a thing of a couple of hours and some emailing back and forth with the Visual Panels mailing list, because the documentation is not quite there yet. Visual Panels is a work in progress. It means that you shouldn't expect everything to work at all times. Actually, on Tuesday, I found out that my panel didn't work anymore, and on Wednesday and Thursday this week, I exchanged emails with the Visual Panels team, and then they told me, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you, you need to call this refresh function, and now it works. So, but the guys on the Visual Panels mailing list are very responsive, and they answer your questions very quickly. So here are some future plans. I'd like to have a black and white list for scrub times, because if you decide to scrub your pools, you don't want them to impact performance of your system. So you might want to prefer scrubbing only after Fridays at 6 and over the weekend, and you don't want to scrub between Monday and Friday during business time. So this is something I'd like to add to the service. And it shows a little bit how this can become more and more complex out of this very simple task of just wanting to scrub pools. But I think it's important for performance reasons to be able to specify windows of time where scrubbing is allowed and other windows of time where we want to, where we don't want to scrub. Of course, it would be nice to expand the GUI and show the current status of scrubbing. So when we see, okay, it's scrubbing already, show maybe a progress bar or something. This will probably require to write our own management bean that talks to ZFS and asks it whether it's scrubbing or not, and maybe put an extra button here. If you want to scrub now, then you just hit that button or something like that. Also, it would be nice to have user-defined instances through the GUI so that the user can say, I want to scrub this pool once a week, and I want to scrub this other pool once every 2 months, and then it will automatically create the instances in SMF, and then they would scrub independently of each other. And then once the GUI becomes complex and beautiful, you probably want to have one button that makes it simple again for the regular user who doesn't want to be bothered and just wants to say scrub or not scrub, and that's everything they want to see. So that's probably another good idea for the GUI. The other thing that behind the covers might make more sense, right now I'm storing all the parameters of my stuff in the SMF service itself as SMF properties. It might be more useful to store them as part of ZFS properties so that when the pool is exported and imported into a different system that runs the service, it would automatically carry all its scrubbing preferences with the pool, and they would travel with the pool. So that sounds like an interesting thing to do. And of course, I still need to publish this as an actual IPKG, but fortunately, I've been to the source juicer talk and to the workshop from Thomas. I now know how to do IPKG packages and distribute them. So that's going to be one of the next things. Okay, here's a summary of the lessons learned. SMF is easy to program, especially if you reuse other people's stuff, and I would encourage you to do so. Whenever you install your own stuff, go spend that extra hour and implement an SMF service. It's really easy. You just take the old RC script and you can basically reuse it as it is as a start-stop script within the SMF service. The only thing you need to do is write that XML file, and again, you can look in SVC method to see how those scripts are implemented, and you can use SVC CFG export to export an already existing services XML file and choose something that's very similar to your daemon, and then you can modify it until it does what you want, and then you will have your new SMF service. And it will make your life as administrators very easy, and it will other people's life easier when you're at home and they are trying to make sense of your service. They will have the chance to find the documentation, to start and to stop it in an orderly fashion, and generally it makes administrator lives easier. And the other thing learned is when you start with a simple idea and just want to do it right, you end up with a surprisingly complex thing. We ended up having 3 SMF services, we created a new role, and we had to jump through some hoops to actually find out whether we scrubbed or not, and we had to jump through some other hoops to be able to package it up. Of course, it becomes complex, but it's also a nice learning experience, and then you get to know all the different corners of Solaris more easily. And the other thing, I like the Visual Panels project. Right now, it may be a little bit too much because you have to load all this Java stuff at once. But they promise to make the whole thing a little bit simpler and, of course, faster. So I think it's a good alternative if you want to create your own management GUIs. Here are some links. Of course, they are in the white paper. And I hope I have still some time for questions. Thank you.